Hi, everybody. My name is Selena. I'm a former middle school teacher and instructional coach who worked in North Texas. I am super honored to be joined by Jim Knight, founder and senior partner of the Instructional Coaching Group, as well as author of several books I'm sure you've all read, including his most recent, The Definitive Guide to Coaching, The 7 Factors of Success. Jim, I am so honored to be joined by you today, and I'm really excited to have you here with us.
Hey, it's great to see you. And it's like a long time no see. It was just 2 days ago we got to meet each other. So I'm grateful for the chance to be talking.
Yes, I shook Jim's hand while he was eating an ice cream. So glad that you had safe travels back home from Learning Forward, Texas.
It's supposed to be living a vegan life. I kind of broke the rules.
Oh no, I outed your dad.
That's okay. It's okay. We're all transparent here. It's all good.
Right. We're all here to learn and grow together.
Right.
Awesome. Well, do you want to give yourself just kind of a brief introduction? I'm sure most people here know you, but would love to hear, just getting into coaching and just kind of a brief introduction.
Sure. Sounds great. But it is really great to see you again. And the conference was so much fun, the Learning Forward Texas. So I started out teaching English, and I used strategies that were really successful. And I started to do professional development in those strategies. And my professional development, people loved the strategies, but had zero implementation after a couple of years. And I worked with Michael Fullen at the University of Toronto. He introduced me to a lot of research and important writing. And then I was trying to figure out, how do I take what Fullen says and translate it into practice? So we started off with a concept of a learning consultant. And that was about 1998. I wrote a paper. This is all on the website, instructionalcoaching.com. You can see all the research. And then we switched the term in 99 to instructional collaborator. And we had a lot of Gear Up funding. So we had the very first Gear Up funding. We tapped into that. And over more than a decade, we ended up getting more than $35 million worth of research funding to study instructional coaching. And after instructional collaborators, I wrote a paper for the Journal of Staff Development. And I talked about instructional collaborators. When it came back, I changed it to instructional coach. And since then, we've continually refined and modified and done all kinds of work, especially recently design research. We have a big project with the American Institutes for Research, also Digital Promise. We're working with them, and we're just trying to get better because we want every kid in every class, everywhere, to get excellent instruction. And that's kind of the story. But just to say that where we are now and where we were in 2006 are radically different. The book Instructional Coaching is pretty much obsolete now. And so what I hope I can convey today is just a little bit of, mostly we've made mistakes and learned from our mistakes. So I hope I can share some of that.
Definitely. I think, our theme today really is thinking about how we can really reframe our mindsets for next year and think about, like you said, it's radically different. I think everybody on the call would agree the last few years have been particularly challenging for, a very known reason. And so it's just so critical that we head into the new school year with a strong start to coaching and mentorship. So I really would love if you could just kind of touch on the 7 factors that you mentioned in your book, what they are, and kind of how you think they really play into what we should be thinking for next year. Sure,
that sounds great. The story of like the 3-legged chair, and if one part of the leg breaks, the chair falls over. Well, this is conceptually impossible, but if you could have a 7-legged chair, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I would say, there are different ways people might do instructional coaching, but if you're doing it kind of in the way we do it, which is you're helping teachers have a bigger impact on students, then these things kind of have to be in place, these 7 things. And the first 3 are about who I am. Right. So what are the beliefs that guide my practice? And what we believe is, and I think we have evidence to support it. One study we did, which you can download online, showed an effect size of 1.02 on change when we do coaching. But we believe that the change happens from the inside out, not from the outside in. And so trying to get the idea that as a coach, I go watch you, and then I tell you what you did right, what you did wrong, and I try to get you to buy into my view, is not the way we would do it. We think coaching should be structured to unleash the other person's potential and their brilliance, as my friend Kristen Anderson says, by having them set a goal that they think is really, really important, and then helping them pursue the goal, a powerful goal. So the partnership approach, which is the first thing, the set of the beliefs, it's really about how do we set up a situation where I'm not telling the other person, what I'm doing is an act of service to help them hit the goal that they think is really, really going to make a difference. And it has to be a powerful goal. It's going to have an unmistakably positive impact on kids, but that's the first thing. And then, like every other probably coaching approach, we recognize the importance of coaching skills, what Diane calls moves, but in particular, the way you listen, the way you ask questions, the kind of questions you ask. It's a little bit like improv. And not that I've ever done improv, but
I have done improv, so.
Okay, well, good. Well, you can tell me if this is true or not.
Yeah.
So what I read about improv is you have to be a really good listener, and it's a little exciting, but a little stressful because you don't know what you're going to do until the other person does their thing. And so for us, you have a list of what Christian Van Urberg calls favorite questions. And then based on what the person says, you ask those questions to invite them to think deeper. And when coaching is really effective, the person should have the acronym that John Campbell uses as ACE. They should have a sense of the action they're going to take. They should have clarity and energy. And so the second thing is the skills you have. The third thing would be the way you lead other people. And leadership, there's a whole host of things there about how I lead myself, which involves self-care and getting clear on my purpose.
Yeah.
But it's also about leading others, which is about balancing ambition with humility. And so the who I am part of instructional coaching is, I need to know what beliefs guide my work. I need to be pretty skillful at listening and questioning and other communication skills. The book Better Conversations, the whole bunch, but the heart of it is listening and questioning. And then I need to be able to interact in a way that helps other people be more capable and lead myself and lead others. And one of those is missing, you're in trouble. Now, the other side, I know I'm trying to keep it quick, is you need a coaching cycle, or what others would call a conversational framework, but you need some kind of structure to move through. And we have one called the impact cycle, which evolved from about 15 years of research. Look at instructional coaching, nothing's in there. And then we use different models over years. We work with coaches in Oregon and then in Washington State, then Othello, Washington. And we just kept revising this cycle to get something simple. But the idea is you get a clear picture of reality, set a goal, and you identify a strategy to hit the goal. And Diane would be the first one to tell you, because this is the heart of her work, is that it's a student-focused goal. Mm-hmm. I'm not focused on the change that I'm going to make. Now, I have to make a change, but what I'm focused on is the change in students. And that change could be engagement or achievement. Now, some people don't embrace engagement as a coaching goal, but I think if your focus is on equity, you have to say we're focused on engagement, because the literature is pretty clear. The reason kids drop out is because they lack engagement.
Right.
And in particular, emotional engagement. Do the kids feel safe? Do they feel like they belong? Do they have friends in school? Is the learning meaningful? And so, so there's engagement goals, but also achievement goals, which is usually about constructing rubrics or using tests or quizzes or possibly checks for understanding. Rubrics more for skills and tests and quizzes more for knowledge. And then in order to make that cycle work, the impact cycle, which is designed to help the teacher identify a powerful goal they want to hit, but a goal that really matters to the teacher. Teacher doesn't care about the goal, you're not going to hit the goal.
Right.
And so you want the thing the teacher thinks about when they drive home or when they wake up in the middle of the night, what's on their mind. That's a thing. We call it a peers goal. I won't go into all that, but there's a very specific kind of goal. But to hit the goal in the impact cycle, the coach has to be able to gather data, which is the second part of the what I do. And you need to gather data so you can get clear on where you want to, what my goal is, and to measure progress. And one of the things a coach does is they build hope by showing progress and by demonstrating a pathway to the goal. And so the data helps the teacher develop agency, because they can say, wow, this really is working. And then, of course, if we're going to hit the goal, we need to know what those strategies are we're going to use to hit the goal. That's what we call an instructional playbook, a set of practices that are high impact, that you're continually refining that playbook, always getting clearer and clearer on what helps teachers hit goals. So the impact cycle, we have a process we follow. Teachers set goals, so we need data. And to hit the goals, we need those strategies. That's the what I do part. And then the last part, I'm doing this thing because we have kind of a Venn diagram in my mind. I said in my workshop yesterday, if I get a tattoo, it's going to be this. But I'm not getting a tattoo. But anyway, the last, but somebody else could. I'm happy to see a picture.
I'm like,
of it, but I'm not.
You want to get matching Venn diagram tattoos at some point after this call?
No, I'm good for other people, but I don't like pain too much. So I'll let the other people do those needles. But it's all good. I'm all up for them doing it. And the last part is where you work. Right. And there needs to be role clarity. And there needs to be clarity around how the coach is going to use their time. And there needs to be theoretical consistency amongst those the coach reports to and what the coach does. If the principal has one set of principles they work from and the coach has a different set, it's probably not going to work very well. They need to meet pretty frequently. And people across the school have to understand this coaching is really a good thing. It's going to save you time. It's going to help you reach more kids. This is a powerful, cool thing. And so you also get clear on things like, what's our policy around confidentiality and so forth. So those are a whole bunch of things, but who I am, that's my beliefs, the way I communicate, and the way I lead, what I do, which is the impact cycle, which involves data and strategies, and where I work, which is about ensuring we're in a situation where the coach is set up to flourish. That's the whole thing.
I love that. I think because there's 7 factors, but I even think you just group them so seamlessly into these 3 buckets. And I want to kind of go through that a little bit because I really resonated in reading the book about just all of these different examples of coaches who, were really strong teachers and put into these positions, encouraged to be in these positions of coaching. But due to different factors, right? Maybe not been as successful as they were hoping to be. Kind of going back to the beginning of like the partnership principles you talked about, can you kind of speak to how coaches can work to bring equality to that coach-teacher relationship, especially, for example, when you're assigned by a principal to work with someone rather than a teacher having that choice to opt in, which I know you kind of briefly talk about?
Well, let me just say one thing, kind of an answer to your first question about the times we're in. And it's not just COVID either. Right. It's politics, it's safety concerns in schools. And then it's the fact that everybody else is struggling. Yeah. And everybody's touched by these times, and we're not meeting with people at their best. And that means we hear things that really zap us. Sometimes I think your identity, it's like a water balloon, and you just, something you hear and it's just poof, it's gone, So I would say the first thing about the partnership approach is that, and I've been writing about this recently, that there are 4 cornerstones for identity. And whenever any of these things are violated, it's hard for the person you're talking to hear what you have to say. And the first one is, I want to feel like I'm a good person. Right. And if the conversation is telling me I'm not a good person, I'm going to have a hard time with it. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, I want to feel competent. Mm-hmm. I want to feel like I do a good work. And when somebody's telling me I'm not doing good work, or they don't see my strengths, at the bare minimum, they see the good and the potential I have to succeed. If the whole message I get is you're not good at what you do, I'm going to have a hard time listening to that and hearing it. Now, the best way to address that, we would say, is to have the person discover it for themselves by watching video of themselves on teaching. For us, videos like rocket fuel for learning. That's the reason why every football team in America, from probably about grade 4 up, the kids are watching themselves on video, because it's right. super powerful. I wrote a book about that. The third thing is we want to feel connected. If we don't feel connected, it's going to be hard. Now, if you wanted to take that to the extreme, it's, I want to feel loved. Mm. Or if you want to articulate it in a negative way, is I don't want to be rejected. In fact, I don't even want to be rejected by people that I reject. but I want to feel connected. And then the last thing is, I want to have some control over what I do. Mm. And when any of those 4 cornerstones are missing, it's going to be a problem. So that's, I think, and when you think about situations where the conversation didn't go well, whether it's with your spouse or your your in-laws or whomever it might be, or people you work with. It's probably one of those four things. And I think easier said than done, but I think to be thinking about, have I done all I can to communicate how good this person is? Am I really seeing their strengths? Am I missing the opportunity to connect because I'm so concerned with myself, or, and then am I trying to control them? And so that control one comes out in the way we do coaching. Michael Bungay Stanier's book, The Advice Trap, is a good description of this. But we think research is pretty clear. We think our advice is way better than it is. And also we think people want it more than they want it.
Don't they?
Well, sometimes.
Right.
But often it's going to be a lot better if the person identifies the goal themselves, if they interpret reality themselves.
Exactly.
And so the way we approach it is, well, you watch a video of your class. I don't want to do a video. We can interview the students. We could look at student work. But if you only look at student work, well, what if transition time is 5 minutes between the centers and you're actually wasting about 30 minutes during the lesson? Or what if the kids aren't that engaged? Or what if the teacher's doing all that talking? You have to address that too somehow. So that's why maybe student work and video is helpful, but the teacher gets a clear picture of reality, and then you help the teacher identify a goal. And I think a simple way to put it is, it's a conversation between equals. It's a conversation between two teachers. It shouldn't feel any different than it did before you became a coach. It should feel just exactly the same. And so there's a tentativeness to say, what do you think about this? Would you do it this way? Do you want to change it? I'm not trying to get the teacher to do something because it's probably not going to work anyway. I'm just meeting them as a partner. Now, if the principal says, you got to go in, you've got to work with this teacher, we would say it's going to be more effective if the principal goes to the teacher and says, I was in your class. Time on task was about 63%. We're committed to getting 90% of the kids on task in every class. We want kids to be engaged in learning. And I know how much you care about your kids. I know you're going to make it happen, and I'm here to help you. Now, you may want to read this book I've got on engaging students by Fisher and Qualia and Fry. You might want to watch a video series we've got. You might want to work with the coach. The coach is a pro at engagement. I don't care how you get there, but we got to get to 90%. And so in that way, the principal can honor the expertise of the teacher and at the same time, help the person get where they need to get to. We say firm on the standard, flexible on how to get there. And if the principal says, look, I was in your class, time on task is 65%, you have to work with the coach, then the coach is a punishment. But if the principal is firm on the standard, flexible on how to get there, then the coach, then they go, hey, look, Wilson's all over me about this. Can you help me? Then you're a lifeline, not a punishment. That's kind of the way we put it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it just, right. We're not like this. We're not at two different places. And I think when somebody else offers that choice of coach, right, it still allows for that ability to opt in, which it is so critical to the teacher coach relationship. And then you kind of also talk about like wanting to learn from your teachers too. So I love how you say it's teacher to teacher. It's not teacher to coach that relationship really thrives. So I guess kind of moving towards some of the other pieces, your impact cycle, well known, but for those who may be new to their coaching roles or not as familiar, can you kind of share well, you did kind of briefly share some highlights. So can you touch on maybe why you believe it's so important for coaches to engage in a cycle and why they might want to do that at the beginning of the year?
Well, you want sustainable change. I think you want, what I say is the power of coaching is it's not just this year, it's every other year you work with a teacher. And so you want a change that's going to have that kind of impact. And right now, the impact cycle is our most effective and efficient way to get there. But it's, we're constantly modifying and making some tweaks. And maybe I could just talk through the cycle with an example of a teacher. So if you go to instructionalcoaching.com and you poke around, you can find videos for this whole cycle. And there's a resources section and there's books and then there's the impact cycle and the videos are there. So this is Krista Crum. She's a fourth grade teacher and awesome teacher. And she did her bachelor's at Notre Dame, or master's at University of Houston. She was a track star in Houston. And I loved working with her. And she she didn't have a lot of experience as a teacher. She was a third-year teacher, and she was Teach for America. That's how she came to be in Lawrence. And her husband was a football coach. So he was coaching for the University of Kansas. And then somehow he just thought maybe it wasn't the best football team in the country. So went to another university. So Krista and I got together. I video recorded her class, and she watched the video. I watched the video. And we feel you have to get a clear picture of reality first.
Yeah.
Because reality is critical for motivation. The motivational interviewing by Miller and Rolnick, they say motivation comes from discrepancy between where I am and where I want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And having that positive future where I want to get to and knowing where I am is really, really important. But if I don't have a clear picture of current reality, I don't feel motivated. That's why sometimes the teachers are kind of like, well, whatever, but when they look at video, they go, oh, I want more of this, or I want less of that, but they see it differently. And there's a whole host of reasons why we don't see reality clearly.
Right.
So Krista looked at her video and we talked about it. And then we talked about her student performance. And she said, I want my kids to be able to write a peak paragraph. She said, as an English teacher in fourth grade in this school, all the kids have to write a peak paragraph. If they can write a peak paragraph, that'll be great. A peak is a district initiative. It's just Lawrence, but she knows when her kids go to fifth grade, they have to write the peak paragraph. Mm-hmm. And so we constructed a rubric, a single point rubric, which I learned about from Jennifer Gonzalez. And she wanted to get 13 out of 15 kids to get 5 out of 5 on the rubric consistently. She said, there are 2 other kids who are going to need my support. And then she identified a strategy to get there. And the strategy was formative assessment. She was going to share the rubric with the kids so they could self-assess and they could do peer coaching. And she was using checks for understanding so the kids could understand all the elements of peak. And the goal, she said, is what we call a peers goal, which is to say it's powerful. Mm-hmm. It's emotionally compelling to the teacher. When I said to her, does this really matter to you? She's like, if we could do that, we'll have writing. She, like, her whole body language is, yes, I want that. So emotionally compelling, and then easy. And now people sometimes don't like the word easy because they think you have to have productive struggle. Well, we got a classroom full of kids. You're going to have productive struggle. Why make it harder? Make it as easy as possible.
Right.
And then it's reachable, which means you can measure it and you can identify a strategy to get you there. And then it's student focused. And so in her case, the student focused goal was measured by the rubric for what an effective paragraph could look at. Again, it could be an achievement goal. Then I described how to do checks for understanding really clearly. But when I described it to her, I said, no, you can modify this if you want. And she had some really good suggestions. She said, well, when we use the checks for understanding, I think the kids need to practice. And I think we should do the no opt-out strategy. And so I had a checklist. I just wrote her ideas down on there. Then I went in and modeled in her classroom how to use checks for understanding. I showed the video, one of my workshops a few years ago. And this coach came up to me named Aretha, who's become kind of a friend of mine. And she said, I'm so glad you showed that video of you coaching. And I was like, oh, really? Why? And she said, well, I was really worried that I'd have to look really good at modeling, but I watch you. You're not that good. I can do what you did. And so, but in a real sense, you don't teach the whole class. You just teach a small amount. And it doesn't always have to be modeling. But usually when a person's going to implement something, they'll say, if I could see this, it would be really helpful. Mm-hmm. And so with Krista, I went in, I modeled it. And it was interesting because, in fact, I wasn't really that thrilled with how the model went. And she kind of got more power in the relationship by almost coaching me. She's like, no, here's the things that happened. And again, it's just a teacher talking with a teacher.
Yeah.
Then she implements. And in her case, she was going to use whiteboards, were one of her checks for understanding. She was going to teach the kids the rubrics. And the first thing she did after she implemented it, she came to me and she said, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think the kids can do it. And that's often what happens. The researchers on change would say you move from uninformed optimism, oh, this is going to be great, right, to what they call informed pessimism. Mm-hmm. And so she got to informed pessimism. And honestly, this is why coaching is important. If she didn't have a coach, she would have given up.
Right then, yeah.
And hope involves a goal. Well, she knew what her goal was, but it involves a belief that you can get there, agency, and a pathway. And so when we got together, we would identify pathways to help her move closer to her goal. And that's why I say coaches bring hope. I mean, they're about learning and hope. It's a pretty wonderful thing. And so Krista did a whole bunch of changes. She changed her rubric a couple times. She created a progress tracker so the kids could keep track of their progress. She changed the way she gave feedback. She had the kids do more peer work. And eventually she got as far as she could get with the goal. And I don't know if she got to 13 out of 15. There were still a couple of kids who needed support, and at the end of it, in the video, she says, I feel like and she's trying to find the words. She said, I feel like I'm teaching and the kids are learning. That's that's her response, and the whole way through. And Krista told me at the start, she said, look, I don't want to be in one of those videos that's obviously fake. She said, I want to be in one that's real. This has to be real or I'm not going to do it. And so, and that's how the process works. You identify a clear picture of reality, a goal, and a strategy. That's the identify stage. At the end of the identify stage, the teacher has a goal they care about. Then in the learning stage, you describe the strategy, and sometimes you model it, and you may go watch another teacher, you might watch a video, you might co-teach, you might go in their classroom. But at the end of the learning stage, however you get there, the teacher's ready to try out this new thing. Then they try it out. And when they try it out, there's essentially only a few things you can do. You can change how you teach the strategy. You can change the strategy. You can change the goal. You can change how you measure progress towards the goal. Or you can say it hasn't worked yet, but it's going to work. Let's just keep doing it. But those are the things you can do. And so you make adjustments, you make modifications until you get as close to the goal or to the goal if you can. And then if you hit the goal, then you keep the cycle going if there's time to do it and if the teacher wants to do it.
I love that. I think you hit on a couple of different things that I love. One is just coaches being vulnerable and you yourself being vulnerable by getting up and modeling and it not being perfect and that being okay. But then also coaches bringing hope. And I think that is something that is just so necessary as we move into next year. I have a final question before we hopefully get to answer a handful of audience questions.
Great.
And mine is really just, I was really impacted by you talking about the system support piece and just how important it is. Obviously, it's one of your factors. So I guess as we are reflecting on what needs to be done and shifting our mindsets, what would you tell district or system leaders that they can do, one small thing that they can do to help facilitate strong coaching in the fall?
Well, does it have to be one? That's kind of a tough, but at any rate, I would say the most important thing is to get clear on the role of the coach. Sit down with a piece of paper and go through, and there's forms like this with the book, but it's just a T-chart. So sit down and list all the things the coach is going to do and then think them through and then say, okay, well, how much of your time is going to be spent on the coaching cycle? Probably you want 70, 80% of your time. If every person you work with is going to take 3 or 4 hours, every time you do something that takes the coach away for 4 hours, that's one less person you're going to be able to coach. So get really clear on what you will and won't do. If the coach is going to be asked to be a part of every PLC, well, that's going to be 18, 20%, 20 hours a week. And so that if they're expected to do impact cycles, that's going to cut them down quite a bit. If they're going to do walkthroughs,
right?
Again, the walkthroughs are going to take a lot of time. They also sort of make you look like you're an administrator, and it's not a coaching cycle. So every school is different. Every school has to make their decisions about what they're going to do. But I think the most important thing is that the coach and the principal, or whoever it is that the coach reports to, but there's real clarity around this is how we're going to spend our time. Because too often, and we did a survey a few years ago where we asked coaches, what's your major roadblock? And 95% of them said time.
Right.
And too often the coach is expected to do miracles. They're supposed to do a cycle, but do a million other things on top of it. Well, if it's going to take you, you're going to be in the teacher's classroom, you're going to have a coaching conversation, you're going to prepare for that conversation. Maybe you're going to watch video. All those things take time, and you can't do it. It's like time on task. You can't do it unless you have the time to do it.
Yeah, time is our greatest enemy, right? I think anybody in any profession always says there's not enough time,
Right.
Especially for coaches and those working in school systems. Awesome. I have a couple of questions that we got from the audience that I'd love to ask you.
Great.
So a couple, I think we might be able to kind of couple these together is, how long should a coaching cycle take? And also, what is a typical day of instructional coaching? What should those look like?
So we studied how long it takes to do a cycle with the coaches in Othello. Now, this is a small group of coaches, like 5 coaches. So I don't know if it's a generalizable bit of data,
Right.
but Digital Promise did the same thing. They observed what was happening with coaches and they came up with roughly the same amount of time. And so we would say on average, it's going to take you 6 to 8 weeks to go through a cycle, but that's an average.
Right.
So it could be you're going to hit the cycle, hit the goal really quickly. And the teacher is going to use the FAIR model to help kids get concepts, and she picks it up really quickly and tries it. And all of a sudden the kids are hitting their exit tickets show that they're hitting getting the concepts, and it doesn't take that time. Or you might spend, one of the people we studied with, they spent a whole semester together. And that was a fantastic teacher whose mother was a teacher and grandmother was a teacher. But she wasn't strong as a writing teacher. And she said, when I watch my students and I see them struggling, I know how they feel, because that's how I feel teaching writing. And she said, when they ask me questions I don't know the answer to, I just move on to something else. And so the coach worked with her for a whole semester, but that teacher is still in the system. I saw our principal a couple of years ago, and the principal said, she's a real leader in the district now. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but I think if you were to kind of calculate an average for the year, probably 6 to 8 weeks. But I don't think you keep working if you've hit the goal, and you don't stop if you haven't hit the goal. You keep working till you hit the goal, whether it takes 4 weeks or 14 weeks. In terms of a typical day, I don't know that there is a typical day, but let me put it this way. What I would do if I'm starting is I would seek out people in the school who are informal leaders in the school. And you can probably think of someone where you say, if Mrs. Schwartz was to do this with me, I bet you the whole math department would work with me. And you pick a couple people who are nice people, informal leaders, and you go to them and you say, look, I'm learning this impact cycle thing. And I would start with the coaching cycle. I think, yes, you have to build relationships and there's ways of enrolling people, but nothing's really happening until you've got the coachings. And I would say to her, look, I've got this checklist I'm working from. I just scaffold it so I can get in there, because it's a lot to learn. It's a lot to process. Right. Are you good to go with me? And then I'd work with them on that. That's where I would start. And I would add to that, though, I think a part of your time, say maybe at least 10% of your time, needs to be targeted for your own professional growth, because coaching is a new job. There's new things to learn, new practices, new ways of gathering data. Right. And so you need to build in, it's not going to happen by chance. You need to have the time. There needs to be a recognition. You have to learn all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it can feel like a lot, but I think you mentioned, right, like scaffolding, chunking all of your time, chunking everything into pieces, just like we would do for our students, for ourselves is super helpful. I know we are at time, and I know we had a lot of questions for you, Jim. So I'm hopeful that we can kind of gather more of your thoughts as we move on to the next piece, and hopefully get some answers to those questions for our audience for a different time. But I just want to thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us and answer some questions. And is there a place where people can go to that you would want them to go, so that way they can continue to follow your work?
3 things. So Twitter, it's Jim Knight 99. Do you know why 99? Wayne Gretzky. So it's Jim Knight 99, but he's my hero. So we got to have Wayne Gretzky. Okay. Our website, instructionalcoaching.com. Yes. And there's a resources section. In the resources section, there are more than 300 things you could download. Tons of videos, but tons of forums and tools. And then the third thing is we have a website called Radical Learners, which offers asynchronous courses. And there's one there that people might be interested in if they're talking about next year. And I'm not trying to sell the course, but just in case, it's cheap. It's like $90 or something. And it's the first 90 days of coaching. So they might want to go to Radical Learners and see what's there. There's other stuff there for communication and teaching strategies too. But those are the 3 things. But the main go-to would be instructionalcoaching.com. There's tons of stuff, the blog, the resources, the books. All the books have forms you can download. And our rule is if you can download it, you can use it. We want you to copy it and share it. And you can't put it in a book without permission, but we're okay with that too. And you probably can't download the videos unless you have a teenager at home. But if the teenager can download the video, you can do that too. We want to get it in people's hands.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim. It was a joy.
It's my pleasure. I hope we're good friends now. I'm looking for you at the next conference too. So I'll be looking for KickUp just so I can see you.
And I'll bring a diet-friendly snack.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm reading this book about habits, and basically it says you need to be prepared for things that challenge things. So when I figure it out, I'll let you know about it.
I'm challenging you.
Because nothing. I mean, I've made progress, but I'm not where I want to be. And I think even I read like 6 books on habits. I'm still not there, but yes. this new book's called The Joy Choice. And I'm encouraged. I think there's hope that she says you have to choose the pleasurable choice that helps you be healthy. Anyway, I better stop talking.